You boys be quiet down there!
Hey, this is Mr. Jakes with another Falcom video for you. I pre-ordered my copy of Trails of Cold Steel 3 directly from Falcom, and it just arrived. I received the package the day before the release date, which is typical when you pre-order directly with Falcom and have it shipped to an address in Japan. So without further ado, let's open this thing up. I should mention that instead of ordering the special edition Kiseki box, I got the regular edition of the game as I usually prefer. I like the regular editions because they come in regular cases that you can line up with your other games. I never know what to do with those extra outer boxes that come with special editions. I already have this issue of Falcom magazine, and here's a flyer on Akatsuki no Kiseki, an online game Falcom licensed to another company, which I don't care for. So, as you can see, there really isn't a lot in here. Usually you get a few goodies if you order directly from Falcom, even if you get the regular edition. This looks like a keychain with the Tor's Military Academy emblem on it. Before I look at the game itself, let's see what this is. Ah, it's a calendar. I'm used to getting these from Falcom pretty much every time I order a regular edition from them. Now the game itself. Let's get this open. Looks like there's really not a whole lot in here. Nothing behind the disc. The manual looks pretty simple too. No download codes this time. Alright, so let's slide it into the PS4 and begin the install. Looks like the update started installing too. Gotta have updates, even on the day before the release date. After the update and a bit of a long install, we can finally start the game. Let's slip forward in time now so that I can give you my first impressions of the game after a bit of playtime. Okay, so now I've had the opportunity to play the beginning parts of the game. First of all, let me apologize in advance if I misuse any terminology or mispronounce anything, since I've never played any of the English versions of the games, and I'm not familiar with what everything is called in English. Also, I'm going to be talking about the events which take place early in the game, so by definition, this video shouldn't contain any information which would normally be called spoilers. But if you're someone who really wants to wait until you get the game yourself before finding out anything, you might want to stop the video right about here. So the game begins with a short playable sequence showing events which will take place later in the game, much like the beginning of the first Trails of Cold Steel. I think they like to do this because the beginning of the actual story contains a lot of exposition and it takes a while before you get to actually play the game. So this serves as a bit of a sneak peek at the game to come. The plot setup for Cold Steel 3 is actually pretty simple at its core. There's a new branch school of Tor's Military Academy. You take control of Reen again, who is now an instructor there. Since this is a Trails game, you probably know that the details get a lot more complicated than that, but that's basically it in a nutshell. It's fun to see Reen now as an adult instead of a high school student. Though not so much time has passed since he graduated Tors, he seems to have matured a lot by this game. Getting to experience the school setting this time from the perspective of an instructor rather than student is a nice change of pace from Cold Steel 1. Reen's class, which happens to also be called Class 7, just like the class in Cold Steel 1, consists of only 3 students. Or at least it only has 3 at the beginning of the game, I don't know. Altina is a character who played a somewhat antagonistic role in Cold Steel 2. She's the other character who has a mysterious disappearing mech like Miriam from the previous Cold Steel games. She has a robotic quality to her personality, and we can expect her human side to come out a lot more, I'm sure, later in the game. Yuna is from Crossbell Police Academy and uses clubs to attack like Lloyd from Zero no Kiseki and Ao no Kiseki, which I'll refer to as the Crossbell games from here on. One difference with Yuna's clubs is that they also have guns attached to them, which allows you to change between gunner mode and striker mode during battles, a new idea for the series. She is very proud to be a citizen of Crossbell, and is resentful of the Erebonian Empire, and also Reen because of the role he played in the Crossbell conflict. It'll be interesting to see how their relationship as teacher and student grows throughout the game. Last, we have Kuruto. I guess his name would be pronounced Kurt in English, so say hello to Kurt. Why does that sound so funny? I guess it just sounds like such a commonplace English name for a character from a JRPG. Anyway, Kurt, as you would guess from his appearance, comes from the Erebonian nobility. In fact, he's the younger brother of Mueller, who you might remember from the Trails in the Sky games. He's very serious about his art of wielding his dual blades, similar to Joshua's in Trails in the Sky. He's also somewhat resentful of Reen, as he isn't impressed by Reen's swordsmanship, and thinks that Reen relies on his mech Valimar too much. I like the low number of new core characters, as it gives the game focus and lets us get to know each character better. Although there's going to be plenty of involvement with the students of other classes to be sure. The student body as a whole also seems a lot smaller than that of the main Tor's military academy, which I also think is good. Since this is a Trails game, of course you can expect that each character, no matter how minor, will have their own personality and at least somewhat of a backstory. But anyway, I think that maybe going with a bit less for this game was probably a good idea. This game already has way more than enough returning characters from previous games. I know there are a lot of Toa fans out there, and they should be pleased to know that Toa plays a very prominent role in this game too. She's also one of the other instructors at the new school. She now has a more equal relationship with Reen as his co-worker, and it is fun to see her in the role of also adjusting to a new job, laughing uncomfortably and speaking frankly with her co-workers. And thank you, Falcom, for bringing back Randy. He was my favorite character from the Crossbell games, and now he is also one of the instructors at the school. His demeanor and manner of speaking haven't changed a bit, but what I really liked about him previously was his chemistry with Lloyd as his older comrade and friend. So I'm not sure how much I will like him here, but it might be interesting to see if he develops a similar relationship with Reen that he did with Lloyd. Tita from the Trails in the Sky games has grown up quite a bit, and is now a student in one of the other classes, so she should appear in the game quite a lot. It's really nice to see a character from a much older game also brought back into a somewhat major role. Agate also makes an appearance in order to see her off at the new school. He leaves afterward, and I don't know how much he will be in the rest of the game. Of course, there's a ton of other characters in the game, but I can't cover them all, and I'm going to start boring some of the viewers pretty soon if I haven't already. Let's just say there's a mix of mostly returning characters and a few new major characters. So far, the structure of the game is extremely similar to Cold Steel 1. We're going to be spending a lot of time in a school again, and taking field trips, I'm just going to call them field trips, to other locations for small segments of the game. The similarities, in fact, start to seem almost a little ridiculous at times. Instead of an old schoolhouse for the training dungeons, this time we have a giant man-made cube. You could say this game rhymes with Cold Steel 1. I have mixed feelings about this, cause although I have lots of fond memories of Cold Steel 1, I wouldn't say that the school-based setting or the way the game progressed was really my favorite in the series. In fact, I much preferred the more open-world feel of Cold Steel 2. The battle system is still what we know and love, but with a few changes. The menus have all been replaced by shortcut buttons rather than the traditional toggle and select menus of the previous games. This didn't really take that much getting used to, and will probably end up being faster once I get even more used to it. Another addition to the battle system is called Brave Order. Basically, it allows you to use some of your Brave points to give a quick boost to your party, and its effects last for a set number of turns. I also like that the Mech Battle system has a bit more depth to it this time. The backgrounds in the battles are also more accurate to the maps than ever. In fact, I think the battles just take place on top of the graphics for the maps, if I'm not mistaken. For instance, if you have an unopened chest or box nearby where you encountered an enemy, the same chest will appear in the background during the battle. Graphically, I was expecting this game to be basically the same as the previous Cold Steel games, but in 1080p and 60 frames per second. I was pleasantly surprised that the graphics seem to have actually been upgraded quite a bit more than that. The character models especially look more detailed than ever, and the environments have maybe been upgraded a bit too. Since it has been 3 years since Cold Steel 2 was released, perhaps it was actually naive of me not to expect as much. And I gotta say that the 60 frames per second really does do a lot to make the game look smoother. The previous two games on PS3 could get pretty bumpy at times. The loading time in Cold Steel 3 is a lot faster too, so as a whole the presentation in this game feels smoother than ever. It goes without saying that these graphics are not much compared to some of the photorealistic games being made by larger developers, but let's not compare this game to those. The graphics here work very well for an anime-style game. Overall, I'm very pleased. Music-wise, there isn't much to say. If you've played a Falcom game before, then you know you're going to get a very nice soundtrack with memorable tunes. As always, I would maybe prefer that they used even more real instruments like they did in the Evolution versions of the Crossbell games, but there are still a number of tracks with real instruments like all recent Falcom games have, and even the completely synthetic tracks are still quite nice to listen to. I've already found a few tracks I like quite a bit. Just one more random thing. There's a mini-game you can play at certain points called Vantage Masters, which is a card game based on the old Falcom game, Vantage Master. It looks complicated, but it only took me a moment to get the hang of it. Despite the appearance being completely different, the rules are actually pretty similar to the original Vantage Master. So overall, I'm really enjoying Cold Steel 3 so far. It's a real treat to finally get back to the world of Zemuria for all new adventures. Hope that all of you will have a chance to play it too soon if you haven't gotten yours already. If you're waiting for the English release, then I feel for you. At least Xseed has announced that they do plan on releasing the game. So I think that's all I have to say about Cold Steel 3 for now. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll leave me a comment below, and if you enjoyed this video, then I'd really appreciate it if you liked, shared, and subscribed. This has been Mr. Jakes from Basement Brothers. See you again soon.